You are listening to The Truth with Sherwin Hughes on 1017 The Truth, The Truth app, and 1017thetruth.com.
Welcome back to the program. In studio, former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. Mr. Holder, always a pleasure to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, man. It's good to see you. It's been a long time since I've actually been in the same studio with you. I've done a bunch of stuff virtually after the pandemic, but it's good to see you. You're still looking pretty good there, man. Still
Likewise.
in good shape. You look grayer than I remember.
A little bit. Well, this politics stuff, it'll age you, it seems. You look like
at me. I got white hair, man.
You're a spry young man, and I don't know how you're keeping it together in these days and times. Before we get to the state Supreme Court election, I have got to ask you, what is it like to see the department that you once led being essentially dismantled and serving the grievances of the 47th president? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, it's a pretty disheartening thing to see. I know that there are lots of good people still in the Justice Department who only want to decide cases on the facts and the law. A lot of people who have been separated from the department who did nothing but their jobs. And so I'm worried about our justice system generally, and it's one of the reasons why I'm here in Wisconsin today, because I'm concerned about the justice system in this great state.
If there was a ruling made by a president, maybe by President Obama, and a district court declared a ruling or an executive order made by, let's say, President Barack Obama unconstitutional, you all would appeal it. Now they're defying the courts. How is that possible? It also tells us that the relationship between the branches of government, a lot of it is just respect. So if the courts issue a ruling that the executive branch doesn't like, you have the right to appeal. It seems like the appeal process with this administration has gone away and they can just openly defy court orders. Where does that end, or what is the end of that?
That's the break glass moment for our system of government. If the executive branch decides not to follow a court order, we've never really been in that kind of situation before. And I'm not sure exactly how that resolves itself, but that would be a matter of really constitutional significance. We'd be in a real constitutional crisis if that comes about.
We do still have our state courts, and in Wisconsin, our process may be a little bit different because we get to elect our state Supreme Court justices. Mm-hmm. And our state Supreme Court justices, they essentially determine the constitutionality of laws by our Wisconsin legislature. And we have got an election coming up on April 1st. In fact, today, early voting has already started between two ideologically different individuals. Brad Schimmel, who has already said that he is going to be an extension and as helpful as possible to Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and he's already pledged his loyalty to them. And then you have Susan Crawford, which represents, the solid foundation of the courts determining things on their merits and standing up for working class people in the state. How do you see this election, Eric, as far as, is this an extension of potentially the influence that MAGA has had on Wisconsin, and we saw that in November, or is this the first election in the midterm elections of 2026?
I actually think that it's both. It's both an attempt to extend that which happened in 24, but it's also the chance for, I think, Wisconsin to say, you know what, we've had enough, and we want to have a justice, Susan Crawford, who will be fair, who will decide cases based on the facts and the law, as opposed to somebody like Brad Schimmel, who I think is an ideologue, a person who is going to do things consistent with the special interest. I mean, he's taken like $11 million from PACs connected to Elon Musk. He has said that he is going to be, a person who works for the MAGA agenda, and more specifically, I think he said that he wants to turn the Wisconsin Supreme Court into a support network for Donald Trump. Given his record, where he ignored thousands of rape kits, left them untested, wasted taxpayer dollars attacking Obamacare. I mean, people have to remember all of this stuff. He defended the state's really egregious gerrymanders that we've been pretty successful in breaking up. He supports an abortion law that was put in place in 1849. And people need to remember, at that point, women could not vote. people like me, African Americans, could not vote, and yet he thinks that this is a law that should be valid. By contrast, Susan Crawford is a person who has been tough as a prosecutor, has been tough and fair as a judge, and I think is really eminently qualified to be the next justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
We currently have a more progressive ideology here in the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And just to make this clear for folks, for those people that think that that might be a horrible thing, we have had, as you mentioned a moment ago, really horrendously gerrymandered legislative maps to where the majority of the people in the state of Wisconsin for the last few election cycles have voted for Democrats, and Democrats have won the popular vote, yet they had the smallest share of Democratic seats in the Wisconsin state legislature. Since rulings have been made and decisions have been rendered about those gerrymandered districts, the Democrats have picked up a tremendous number of seats, which reflects the state sentiment of wanting to vote for Democrats. We can lose all of that.
Yep.
The fairness of interpreting our maps with the election of Brad Sherwin. So talk about some of your redistricting work and how that actually puts power in the hands of the people, because there's not a whole heck of a lot we can do between now and 26 about what is happening at the federal level. But here at the Wisconsin state legislative level, we do still have a tremendous amount of power.
Now, that's an extremely important point. I mean, what brought me to Wisconsin first in 2017 as head of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee was to fight what was probably the worst gerrymander in the country. And over time, through the election of Supreme Court justices, the election of a good governor, Tony Evers, we've been able to break up that gerrymander. And that means that, people's lives here in Wisconsin means that your representative is somebody who is consistent with the values that the majority of the people in this state have. I mean, it is not, people look at Congress and what happens in Washington. On a day-to-day basis, your life is more impacted by who serves in Madison, by who serves in the state legislature. And breaking up that gerrymander is one of the things that I am most proud of. And I think that the election of Susan Crawford as the next Supreme Court justice here in the state of Wisconsin will ensure that you'll continue to have a court that will rule on the facts, rule on the law, and protect the rights of the people of this great state. Schimmel, by contrast, is going to be an ideologue, and he's going to be a person who's going to do things consistent with those people who put in place those gerrymanders in the first place, and that we fought so hard to break up.
Republicans currently have a majority. It's a narrower majority in the Wisconsin state legislature than they had, say, some time ago. Because of the redrawing of our maps, Democrats now have much more of a legislative say-so. But it's almost like they rule like they're going to be in power forever. And so they've created this new rule here in the state of Wisconsin where only the Wisconsin state legislature can put a referendum on the ballot. We have, and I want folks to be aware of this, if you vote early, if you vote via mail, when you receive your ballot or when you go and vote, you're going to see a constitutional referendum question on this ballot where they want to enshrine voter ID, which is already a law. And the law, I would argue, is working well, no issues with it. But they want to enshrine it in the Wisconsin state constitution. So we have a binding referendum on this current ballot that you all are going to see that will enshrine voter ID in the Wisconsin Constitution, because there's this fallacy that if and when Democrats win, it's only because illegal people are voting. And so now they have to go above and beyond to make sure that this is enshrined in the Constitution. Can you just speak on some of the things that Republicans do that are unnecessary, that will change our Constitution in order to drum up their base to get more voter turnout?
Well, it's the foundation for a lot of what Republicans do is this fallacy that somehow, some way, elections are tainted. That we have people who shouldn't be voting, that we look at Musk, but he says, Social Security recipients who are 150 years old or who are dead. There's a lot of stuff that they run on that simply is not true. Voter ID, as you said, works well here in Wisconsin. I don't see why it needs to be in the Constitution, given the fact that you've got a statute that works pretty well. I'd go even further than that, though, and say that the concern about this need for voter ID is, again, based on the fallacy that our elections are not being conducted in a fair way, that people who shouldn't vote are actually casting ballots. Trump talked about, people here in Wisconsin, Republicans here talked about, people who are not citizens of the state, not citizens of the United States casting ballots. None of this stuff has been proven to be true. The Brennan Center did a study and said you'd be more likely to be hit by lightning than to cast an illegal in-person ballot. And nevertheless, they want to legislate on the basis of that fallacy.
I just talked about this last week. It's something like out of 1 billion votes that were cast between like 2000 and the re-election of Barack Obama 2012, there were 31 incidents of any kind of credible voter fraud. So exactly 0 votes that could have influenced 0 elections. Yet, we have to have all of these strict rules in place to make sure that people are not cheating. And I say this all the time, Eric. It's hard enough to get people to vote once, let alone go out and cheat and try and vote twice or do some kind of malfeasance.
Well, the interesting thing of that 31 votes, a pretty substantial number of them were people who were Republicans casting votes for Republican candidates. You know, let's, if you want to really break down that 31 out of 1 billion and something, let's look and see exactly who was doing what.
Another thing that they are injecting into this race, and we do it with every state Supreme Court race, and I kind of wish that we wouldn't do it because people think that our state Supreme Court justices have different functions than they actually do. They talk about, well, Susan Crawford didn't give this criminal 47 years in prison. The state Supreme Court doesn't even decide on criminal cases. It is more of like administrative law. They can discipline lower court judges. They make rulings on the constitutionality of legislation, et cetera, et cetera. But it works. And so someone who is listening to all these ads and being bombarded by all the digital content from the 2 different campaigns, what do you want folks to know and to understand about the functions of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court? And it's not a criminal court.
Right. Wisconsin State Supreme Court reviews cases, reviews sentences that are imposed by trial judges. It doesn't decide sentences. And what they're trying to do with Susan Crawford is to inject fear into this race, that somehow, some way, based on her record, which they mischaracterize, she's going to let people out of jail who have committed serious crimes. What people really need to fear is a justice like Brad Schimmel, who will be in the back pocket of Elon Musk, who will be a part of the Trump chaos that we have seen taking place around the country. What you want to do is have a steady hand. You want somebody who's going to be fair, somebody who's going to be impartial, somebody who's going to protect the rights of the American citizens, and not somebody who is going to make decisions on the basis of ideology or on the basis of campaign contributions. Again, $11 million from Elon Musk and from his PACs. And he gives this money like 5-10 days after he sues the state of Wisconsin to try to figure out ways in which he can sell more Teslas here in the state. Now, you think that Elon Musk is not going to ask for or expect some kind of payback for all the money he's investing in this race? Let's not be naive here, ladies and gentlemen. We know what's going on here. I've been here, as I said, for a number of years. This one's not close. I mean, this one really is not close. Susan Crawford is as qualified a candidate as I've seen for the state Supreme Court. Schimmel, by contrast, is a person who I see is just ideologically and financially compromised.
Former U.S. Attorney General and my friend, Mr. Eric Holder. Before you go, Eric, we're looking for folks to run in 2028 because, I think MAGA has really run its course after 2 months of its second term. So if you're thinking about running for president, I'm just saying we probably can get you some votes. And Wisconsin is a battleground. We're a very important state. I think we could do some things for a year if you're so inclined.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I might age out. I'm a little on the older side. On the other hand, I have a kind of a youthful affect and still interested in the issue. So but I think I'm really going to be focusing on what I'm doing now, heading up the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, working for good state candidates like Susan Crawford, and making sure that people get out there and vote. Early voting, as you said, has started, and we got to make sure that people vote between now and April the 1st for Susan Crawford.
I agree, but also, ladies and gentlemen, he didn't say no. He did not say no, so we're going to keep working on him. Always a pleasure to have you in our state, and always love to see you.
Well, it's great to see you, man.
The Truth with Sherwin Hughes on 101.7 FM. We'll be right back.
The Truth with Sherwin Hughes returns after this on 101.7 The Truth App, and 1017thetruth.com.